Everybody, welcome to Mornings with Tim and Joe. Thank you. My son Eric got me a mixing board and a little better microphone, so let me play around with these things a little bit today. We've been talking about the holiness of God lately, and last time we mentioned the word holy refers to someone or something that is separated from the common, set aside for God's use. As an example, when Belshazzar apparently got bored with just getting drunk, he profaned the holy temple vessels. They're holy because they were set aside for use in God's temple by God's priests exclusively, and then using those to drink toast to his idols. You'll find the story in Daniel chapter 5, verses 2 to 4. Well, unlike his created beings, our God is eternal, he's preeminent, he's omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. He was, he is, he will be before all things. He's ageless, tireless, he's faultless. He is so far beyond human comprehension. Our language even lacks the superlatives necessary to justly describe our God and how far he is above and beyond us. For example, in the Bible there is the tabernacle and the way it was configured. Moses did not make this up, by the way. There is a temple in heaven. John saw it on Patmos. Hebrews 9:24 says, Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Moses used that temple, that pattern that he saw in heaven, as a pattern for the tabernacle in the desert. Now, one thing about the way this tabernacle was constructed, it was built in a way that shouts, everybody stay away. To begin with, there was a high fence around the whole structure to keep everyone out, except for those who would enter through the one gate with a sacrifice. And when they did that, they would enter an open-air courtyard with the sacrifice, offered with the assistance of priests and Levites, and the bronze altar was there for that purpose. And once inside that fenced area, there was a sanctuary. It was basically a large tent. The tabernacle was 10 cubits wide, 15 feet, 10 cubits high, 15 feet high, 30 cubits long, 45 feet long. So it's 15 by 15 by 45 feet, with the entrance on the east side. But you could not just walk in to that sanctuary. No, you've gone as far as you can go if you're an average Israelite. There you made your sacrifice. That's just for the priests. And the priests would have daily duties that they would perform inside that holy place. There was oil that needed to be placed in the lampstand, and wicks that needed to be trimmed, and once a week there was bread that would be brought into the table of showbread, and there was incense that was placed in the altar of incense. Well, the priests would do that every day. But there was a second room beyond that in this tent, the Holy of Holies. Not even the priests were allowed in there. In fact, there was only one person who was allowed to go in that room. That would be the high priest once a year on Yom Kippur. Then inside the Ark of the Covenant, would be inside the Holy of Holies, which represented God's presence for people there. And when we see the tabernacle, we're drawn to him because he's the one who made us. But as inherently flawed creatures, we also realize that we don't belong there. We bow before his majesty and his glory, like John did when he saw Jesus in his glory on Patmos. He'd been very close to Jesus during his earthly ministry. In his gospel, he only referred to himself as the disciple Jesus loved. He was an old man when he wrote his gospel, but I don't think he ever got over the fact that Jesus loved him. And that's how he described himself. But when he saw Jesus in his glory, the Bible says he fell at his feet as one is dead. Somewhat similar to the Israelites as they saw the glory of God appear to Moses on the mountain in Sinai. Exodus chapter 20, verses 18 and 19. It says, all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings and the noise of the trumpet and the mountains spoken. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. And they said to Moses, speak thou with us, and we will hear. But let not God speak with us, lest we die. They realized they don't belong in the presence of a holy God. That's clear, because God is holy. And because we are so unholy, we don't belong close to his presence. And yet that same tabernacle that I've described is a place that illustrates the separation between a holy God and sinful people, is also a place of reconciliation and atonement. That's what makes grace so amazing. It's not that God recognized what wonderful people we really are, but that he looked at us as sinners that are undeserving, unworthy. We should be on our faces before him, and decided to save us. Isaiah 57:15 says, thus saith the high and lofty one that inhabiteth eternity, whose name is holy. I dwell in the high and holy place with him also, that is of a contrite and a humble spirit, to revive the spirit of the humble, to revive the heart of the contrite ones. God dwells in that holy place because he is holy. But he didn't intend to be there alone. He saved us so that we could have boldness to enter the throne of grace through Christ and his redemption. The high priest would wear a turban, and on it was engraved a gold plate, Exodus 28:36. It says, thou shalt make a plate of pure gold, and engrave upon it the engravings of a signet, holiness to the Lord. These words represented the position he held as the high priest. He would represent the people before God. He would represent God before the people. The holiness of God was clearly upon this man as the high priest. Not because he was so good. There were some priests who were decent men, but there were some who were not moral men or even good men, but their office gave them that privilege to appear before people representing the holiness of God. But that's not the end of the story. In Jeremiah chapter 2, verses 2 and 3, we read, I remember thee, the kindness of thy youth. He's talking about Israel, and the love of thine espousals, when thou wentest after me in the wilderness, in a land that was not sown. Israel was holiness to the Lord. Just like that high priest represented the holiness of God's people before them, the nation of Israel represented God's holiness before all the nations of this earth. And when the Lord returns, all the nations will worship the Lord Jesus while he reigns in Jerusalem. His goal of reaching all nations with salvation will be accomplished. The prophet Zechariah said in Zechariah 14:20 and 21, in that day there shall be upon the bells of the horses holiness unto the Lord, and the pots in the Lord's house shall be like the bowls before the altar. Yea, every pot in Jerusalem and in Judah shall be holiness unto the Lord of hosts. The day is coming where it's not just the high priest, and it's not just the nation of Israel, but the most common implements that are there in the presence of the Lord, like the bells on a horse or pots that you would use in the kitchen of the temple, would be marked by his holiness. He's going to share that with his people one of these days. You see how amazing grace really is. Well, we'll think about this. I think I'll do one more session on the holiness of God, and we'll bring this to a close. But I'll look forward to doing that, and I'll see you again very soon. Have a great day, folks.